So for all of you out there who are noticing a group of African Americans, and I use this term of quotations, African Americans, who are supplanting the image of other African Americans, specifically this group of African Americans who tend to keep a lower profile, who tend to stay out of controversy, who tend to be able to avoid talking about social justice issues. This group of African Americans who tend to do their jobs when it comes to entertainment, sports, and other things without trying to be seen for more than what they are. These are the group of African Americans who I would like to refer to as the hybrid African American, or the hybrid Negro. Now, this is an inspiration. This video is inspired by O'Shea Duke Jackson's The Super Negro Immigrant, in which he talks about how Africans and Caribbeans are slowly but surely taking over the position of African Americans due to the fact that they can function in the Western world. They don't have racial hang-ups, and in many cases, they can do things that are needed in a complex society such as the one we have today, in a capital-intense society versus a labor-intensive society, the likes of which we have of today. And in a lot of cases, they can speak just as well, if not better English than the typical African-American Negro. But I raised O'Shea, and shout out to him, by the way. Go ahead and check out that video and his channel. But I, along with I personally, will raise O'Shea, the hybrid Negro, as the individual who is taking over the image of African Americans. Now, why do I say that the hybrid Negro is more of a threat to African Americans than the immigrant? Well, it's simple. For starters, a lot of super Negro immigrants tend to have first-generation sons and daughters who end up, in many cases, dating outside their race, henceforth creating the hybrid Negro. And by the way, for a lot of you guys out there who believe that multiracial people are black, you do realize that that rule came from white supremacists. And if you are in any way believing that the one-drop rule is valid, you don't just use it for context, but you really believe in the bottom of your heart that it's valid, and you're upholding white supremacy. And you really need to sit down about bitching about any other sort of other entity holding up white supremacy and structural law. No, shut up. Sit down, shut up. You're just as much of a problem as anybody else. But the hybrid Negro, which I'm only going to use this and associate multiracial individuals with African Americans for context and to specify what combination I'm using. So that's what I'm using this for, and that's what I'm using my language for. But the hybrid African American, the multiracial person of half African American descent, is taking over the African American image. And they're doing it, well, I'm going to explain on, first, where they come from, second, how they're doing it, and third, the hang-ups that they faced, and how multiracial people can get over those hang-ups. So, where do they come from? Where is it that where are all these multiracial people coming from? Well, it's simple. A lot of African Americans, specifically African American males, due to the Negro uprising, have been shunned from the African American collective. As a result, a lot of these individuals find themselves looking for other places to be accepted, embraced, or at the very least, allowed to be left alone. And in many cases, their solace is found in communities outside of the so-called black community. Now, this happens to men and women, but this mostly happens to black men, particularly those who don't fit the stereotype. And as a result, they end up getting with non-black women most of the time. Despite the dismay, and to the dismay of individuals who believe that these certain men should go to work, go home, play video games, jerk off, and then eventually die, a lot of these men are saying no. A lot of these men are refusing to be forcefully celibate. And a lot of these men are refusing to be the scraggle-daggle, in the spirit of SYSBM, the scraggle-daggle's safety plan if all else fails. They are taking their own lives in their own hands, and they are living their lives and making sure that them, their spouse, and their children are set in the position of maximum safety and advantage, as Kiri Gakure Jones says. So, as a result, you have a bunch of multiracial children, and granted, yes, this happens too with black women. Don't get me wrong. There are certain cases in which black women are shunned from the community to the point that they end up dating out and marrying out, and they have functional children as well with non-black men, and shout out to them. Not to be confused with the trademark swirlers who, despite all of the talking about how, oh, I'm going to date me this, I'm going to date me that. Well, we don't see a lot of dating or happy marriages on their end, but that's a whole nother story. But to those who are legitimate, along with and especially the black men who are forced to date outside their race, a lot of biracial children are the result of this. And second, who are these faces and how are they taking over the image of African Americans? Well, it's simple. We can point to many examples in Hollywood and in, well, particularly entertainment, which is synonymous with Hollywood, and in sports. For instance, obviously you have actresses and actors who are biracial and are getting roles like that. I mean, even those who don't get as much roles in performances and concerts, these were individuals who were considered the top of the top back in their day, regardless of where they are now. Examples such as your Mariah Carey's, Halle Berry's, your Alicia Keys. The names can go on. We can throw in all sorts of let me see, your Drakes. I mean, come on. If you want someone, regardless of what you think, how sensitive you think he is, Drake is relevant. And he's been relevant for some time. And let's go to the acting side of your Dwayne Johnsons and your Vin Diesels. Other individuals that you can name, which would take me all day to go down the list, but yeah, some of these individuals have even ascended to the point in which you actually have them not being seen as black, but as multiracial individuals. Granted, some of it is because, yeah, they are light, bright, and damn near white, but that's beyond the point. You have light, bright, and damn near white people who are in the hood and who act as black as anybody else, if not worse than your typical mediocre Negro, or than your typical hood nigga. But as far as individuals in entertainment, the list goes on. Also, in sports, we've seen the examples. We've seen the individuals who come into the league and steal it with a meteoric rise. People like your Tony Parkers, your Tim Duncans, people who, even if they aren't biracial directly, they have grandparents who are light-skinned or white. They definitely have a non-black admixture in them, which is obvious, which is very conspicuous if you look at their faces, their skin tones, whatever. I mean, I named some past examples. But obviously, the best duo of today, the biracial duo that we have here, who are dominating the NBA, comes in the form of Stephon Curry and Klay Thompson. And not just in basketball, but in football. We have individuals such as Russell Wilson, regardless of what you think about his mating choices, and Dak Prescott, who is holding up his own in the league. Also, you have many other biracial people who are playing other positions in basketball and football. And in other positions such as MMA, for instance. But as far as these places, why I specify sports entertainment is that these are the places where African Americans usually dominate. However, now they're getting supplanted by multiracial individuals. Multiracial individuals who pretty much have, I won't say nothing to prove, but they don't have as much of a chip on their shoulder when it comes to racial identity politics. And as a result, along with the advantage of being raised with a father who's present and a mother who's feminine compared to the mediocre Negro, these individuals have the upbringing that will allow them to function in a Western society. Not to say that African Americans can't, but we've all seen the results of the welfare state and kicking fathers out the home and having mothers become the mom and dad. We won't get into that. As a result, these group of hybrid blacks tend to be seen as the superior black. Right, wrong, or indifferent, this is how it is in the eyes of the American society. And this is a growing issue which should concern dark-skinned blacks. My dark-skinned black brothers and sisters. I don't use this that often, and I'm not using this to be sarcastic neither, but this is going to be a concern in the future. I would say give it 10 years. Now, a lot of these individuals, as I said, can function in society without having to prove anything or having the need to show how black they are. Whereas before, multiracial individuals, even those who are light, bright, and damn near right, always had to have some sort of hold some sort of grudge or act like they had some sort of grudge because they had that pressure of the one-drop rule. The one-drop rule, which I want to emphasize once again, is a white supremacist law. And if anyone out there in their heart of hearts believes in it, you are upholding white supremacy. Which segues to the biggest example of the hybrid African American taking over the position of what blacks should be doing, at least according to what society's told us. President number 44, Barack Hussein Obama. What a perfect example of what I'm emphasizing in this video. Someone who was raised in a non-single black mother environment to the point in which he was able to be president of the United States. And that's a white single mother. Imagine if he had his dad around. You all lucky that he just had a single mother around. He was raised by his grandparents. I mean, jeez. Looking at the policy, no, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there. But as far as the African Americans concerned, this is going to be an issue if it isn't already. Because these are the people who not only are seen as more pliant and more civilized, and I'm not saying it's true, but we have to look at what the predominant society says and thinks. Especially compared to how most dark-skinned African Americans are functioning today, and those are females and males, by the way. This isn't just some thing which I'm going to take one side on and be like Tommy Sotomayor and say, look, these dark-skinned hair hats or whatever. Look, both sides are really not helping their image, and they, for some reason, have no interest in improving it. So, with that, we're going to have to go on the record that the image of African Americans, particularly dark-skinned blacks, are not good. And the forefront of that are African Americans. I should say the image of blacks worldwide, dark-skinned blacks worldwide aren't good. And yeah, you can finish that sentence. But what is it that's holding American biracial people of African American descent back? Well, it's the guilt. A lot of them feel as if they need to compensate by sticking on their black side and owning their black side and being SJWs and all this other kind of stuff. Another example in football is Colin Kaepernick. I mean, we've seen how all SJW he's gotten, mainly because his career has been irrelevant, but a part of it is because of him being biracial. And being biracial, he has this conflict that the American society has made, in which makes him feel as if he doesn't rep his black side hard enough, he's not genuine. He's not a good person. He's evil if he doesn't stand up for the black side of things. Which, to all of you biracial Americans and multiracial people watching, take it from someone who's been raised at least part of his time in the black community. There is nothing to defend about this so-called community, and there hasn't been for the past 50 plus years. But that's a whole nother story, a whole nother video once again. And in another example, we have a guy who is in the league, in Russell Wilson, but due to the fact of being shamed into acting black and defending his black side, he was duped into dating, cucked himself to the point of marriage. Well, not to the point of marriage. If you don't know the story, he actually said that he didn't had sex with Sierra until they got married. I mean, granted, yeah, they're married now, and he has a kid with her, but the fact that he was shamed into dating and marrying a glorified hood rat shows you the shaming language that works towards biracial individuals. And I'm going to say something that's very controversial. Well, two things. A lot of people, a lot of Negroes who say that biracial people struggle with their image and their identity and blah, 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 blah. A lot of you say that because you want to be biracial yourselves, and that, or at the very least, have the position and afford the advantage and the placement that biracial people do, in which they can choose which side of the fence, the so-called racial fence, to be on. And something that's going to be even more controversial than that. This is the reason why a lot of biracial women go for dark-skinned guys. It's because they've been beaten into doing so. In many cases, mentally, some cases physically, but in many cases, it's basically the biracial version of white guilt. Biracial guilt. But I'm here to tell biracial people the following. Do not feel ashamed of what you were born as. Chances are one of your parents was running away from something or was excluded from something because he or she didn't fit into the image, the negative image that has permeated the black race, the American black race, for 50 years. So going back to that image more likely will cause your parents, and really think about it, going back to that community will probably get rid of all the work and negate all the effort they have done to ensure that their offspring, you, yes you, are at the position of maximum safety and advantage. Not to say you can't date dark-skinned black dudes or whatever, but let's be honest. Looking at the community that is the former corpse of the African-American community, what is there really? So, for all you biracial individuals out there, do not feel guilty. Live your lives, follow your dreams, and more importantly, fight for your birthright. Now, I'm telling people outside, especially multiracial people, even light-skinned people like myself, who, me personally, I do have some members of my family, particularly those grandparents, great-grandparents who were non-black. And yes, I'm going to tell you guys right here, right now, there has been cases in which I have probably gotten the better treatment for being a lighter hue African American. Yes, I'm predominantly black, but as you all can tell, or some of you were able to tell, or have been able to tell, I have a lighter skin tone, and I speak in a more Anglophonic tone. Vocal tone, I should say. And as a result, I would say life has been a bit easier for me in the United States. This is compared to if I were to leave the United States and go to any other country in the world, I would not be confused for being an African. I would likely be confused, and people of my skin tone and lighter would definitely be seen as either African American, African Brit, African Canadian, Australian, whatever, or Canadian, or French or German if I went in and spoke their respective languages, or I would be seen as a biracial individual. And to all the biracial people out there, I would say take advantage of whatever you can. Do not feel guilty that you were born of a lighter hue. Now, do not tear down those who are darker than you, who had the unfortunate genetic luck of being born in an image that would put them in the fully African American category. And when I say unfortunate, I'm just using their language of the woe is me, I was born black, they hate me because I'm black and white supremacy. But as far as you guys out there, do not be ashamed of taking advantage of what you were born with. And do not be ashamed of your multi-racial heritage. For everyone else out there, always bet on X.